Imagine sitting at the kitchen table with your latest credit card statement, reading line by line, and noticing two things at once. First, a late fee that looks higher than you expected. Second, a notice buried in small print about changes to your account terms. And now you're wondering, wait a minute, didn't I hear that credit card rules were changing? Aren't seniors supposed to have more protections than this? That confusion is exactly why this matters right now. If you're retired, living on Social Security, pension income, savings, or any fixed monthly budget, even one credit card mistake can cost real money fast. A late fee, a higher interest rate, a missed dispute deadline, or a fraudulent charge you don't catch in time can quietly eat into money you need for groceries, prescriptions, utilities, or rent. And the problem for many older Americans is not just the charge itself. It's that the most important information often shows up in fine print, legal wording, or a notice that's easy to overlook. So in this video, we're gonna slow all of that down. We'll talk about what's actually changing, what isn't changing, what many seniors are misunderstanding about new credit card laws, and what you should check before your next statement costs you more than it should. We'll also go over the specific protections that matter most if you're dealing with a billing mistake, a rate increase, a late payment, or possible fraud. And one of the biggest points is this: just because you heard a headline about credit card fees or new rules does not mean your next statement will automatically be cheaper or safer. That assumption alone can lead to an expensive surprise. Let's start there. A lot of people heard that credit card late fees were being reduced. That headline came from a federal rule that was designed to lower the safe harbor late fee for many large card issuers to $8. So naturally, a lot of viewers, especially seniors trying to stretch retirement income, assumed that meant the next late fee on their statement would be much smaller. But here's the part many people miss. That late fee rule has been tied up in litigation and stayed, which means you should not assume your card issuer is limited to an $8 late fee right now. In plain English, the headline was real, but the practical effect for your statement may not be what people expected. So if you've been thinking, I'm not too worried if I'm a few days late because the fee is probably small now, that is exactly the kind of misunderstanding that can cost you money. And that brings us to the real issue behind this title. For seniors, the danger usually isn't reading too little news. It's acting on half of the news. You hear that the rules changed. You assume the account is more forgiving. You miss a due date by a couple of days. Then the statement arrives with a late fee, extra interest, and maybe even a warning sign that your account is becoming more expensive. When you're on a fixed income, that chain reaction matters. Not because one fee ruins everything, but because these charges can stack up month after month. So the smartest approach is not to guess what changed. It's to know what protections already apply to you, what proposed changes are still uncertain, and what parts of your statement deserve immediate attention every single month. The first thing to watch is any notice about your interest rate. A lot of seniors focus on the balance and the minimum payment, which makes sense. Those are the biggest numbers on the page. But sometimes the most important sentence on the statement is the one that says your APR is changing, or that a promotional rate is ending, or that future purchases may cost more. In general, credit card issuers are usually required to give advance notice before raising your interest rate for new purchases. And generally, they are restricted from raising the rate on an existing balance, except in certain situations. That matters because many retirees carry a balance from month to month, especially after medical expenses, home repairs, or helping family members. If you don't catch that notice early, you may keep using the card the same way, only to realize later that the debt is getting much more expensive. Now, there's an important exception. If your rate is variable, tied to an index like the prime rate, it can move for that reason. A temporary promotional rate can also expire, and if a payment is seriously late, that can trigger additional consequences. So when you see a rate change notice, don't just ask, is this legal? Ask, what balance does this affect, and when does it start affecting me? That one question can save you a lot of money. Let's say you use one credit card mainly for prescriptions, gas, and the occasional household purchase. You carry a modest balance, nothing extreme, and you pay more than the minimum when you can. Then your statement includes a notice that future purchases will have a higher APR in 45 days. If you don't notice it, you may keep charging everyday expenses onto a card that just became much more expensive to use. But if you catch it in time, you might stop using that card for new purchases, pay down what you can, and move regular spending to a lower cost option. That's not dramatic, that's practical. And practical is what protects retirement income. Now let's talk about something equally important: billing errors and suspicious charges. This is one of the most overlooked protections seniors have, and the timing matters more than most people realize. If you see a charge on your credit card statement that looks wrong, the safest move is to act right away. Call the card company immediately so the issue is on record. But to fully protect your rights in a billing dispute, you also generally need to send a written billing error notice within 60 days after the charge appeared on your statement. That deadline is critical, not when you first noticed it, not when you finally got around to organizing paperwork, not when your family member had time to help you. The clock generally runs from when the charge appeared on the statement. So imagine this: you're reviewing your card bill and you spot a charge from a company you don't recognize. It's not huge, maybe $60, maybe $120. That amount may not sound catastrophic, so it's easy to put the statement aside and deal with it later. But small, unexplained charges are exactly the kind people delay on. Then weeks pass. Then the next statement arrives. And now you're much closer to losing the cleanest path to dispute it. That's why I always say this is not just about fraud, it's about delay. Delay is expensive. And if you're a senior who doesn't check statements online every few days, or if paper mail piles up, or if someone else usually helps with finances, you have to be even more intentional. The sooner you review the statement, the more options you have. There's another reason this matters. While a billing dispute is being handled, the card issuer has obligations too. In general, the issuer must acknowledge the dispute in writing within a set period and investigate within a set time frame. If the company agrees you were right, the charge should come off. If it says the bill is correct, it must explain why. That process is there for a reason. But it works best when you use it promptly and correctly. Now let's look at a very common misunderstanding. Some seniors believe that if they already paid the charge, they can't dispute it anymore. That's not necessarily true. Paying the amount does not automatically mean you gave up the right to challenge a billing error. But the process still matters, and the written notice still matters. So don't assume, well, I already paid it, so there's nothing I can do. If the charge is wrong, address it. Next, take a close look at the minimum payment section. This part of the statement doesn't always feel urgent because it doesn't look like a warning, but it often is one. Federal rules require credit card issuers to show you information about how long it could take to pay off your balance if you make only the minimum payment. And they also show an amount that could pay off the current balance in about 3 years, assuming no new purchases. That box is not there for decoration. It's there because paying only the minimum can quietly keep someone in debt for years. For seniors, this matters in a very specific way. A person in their 30s might think, I'll carry this for a while and catch up later. A retiree doesn't always have the same flexibility. If your income is fixed, every extra month of interest is money that has to come from somewhere else. So if your statement says the minimum is, for example, $40, but the 3-year payment amount is $90 or $100, that gap is telling you something important. It's telling you what the debt is actually costing. And no, you do not have to pay the 3-year amount. But the more you pay, the less interest you pay over time. That's the practical takeaway. Suppose you're carrying a balance after a dental bill or a car repair. If you only look at the minimum payment, you may think, good, I can manage that. But if the account is charging a high APR, the minimum may barely move the balance. So the smarter question is not, what's the least I can pay? It's, what payment gets me out of this balance before it keeps draining next month's budget too? That brings us to the due date itself, because many expensive problems begin there. A payment generally is not supposed to be treated as late if it is received by 5 p.m. on the day it is due, in the time zone stated on the billing statement, or the next business day if the due date falls on a Sunday or holiday. But the key word there is received. That matters more than people think. A lot of seniors still pay bills by mail or through online bill pay systems that are not instant. So if you mail a payment on the due date, that does not mean it arrived on the due date. And if your online payment is scheduled too close to the deadline, processing time can still work against you. This is one of those rules that sounds small until it hits real life. Maybe you were traveling, maybe you were sick, maybe the statement arrived later than usual, maybe you thought the payment would go through the same day. But if the issuer receives it late, you could face a late fee, more interest, and if late payments become a pattern, possibly even a penalty rate issue. So before your next statement, ask yourself one simple question. How am I actually making this payment? Not how you intend to pay it, how it is actually going to reach the card company on time. For some seniors, the safest move is autopay for at least the minimum, combined with a calendar reminder to make an extra payment if possible. For others, especially those who are careful about account balances and prefer not to automate everything, the safest move may be to schedule the payment several business days early. The right answer depends on your habits, but the principle is the same: build in margin. Now let's talk about fraud, because this is where older adults can be especially vulnerable. If you spot unauthorized use, federal law limits your responsibility for unauthorized credit card charges. But the smartest move is still immediate action. Report it quickly. Review statements regularly. And if you think the issue could be identity theft, you may also want to place a fraud alert or even freeze your credit, which can make it harder for someone to open new accounts in your name. This matters for seniors because credit card trouble is often the first visible sign of a larger problem. Maybe a stranger got your card number. Maybe someone used your information online. Maybe a scammer convinced you to give out account information over the phone. Or maybe the issue is closer to home and more uncomfortable to talk about. Sometimes unusual charges are not random. Sometimes they involve financial exploitation by someone the older adult knows or trusts. That is exactly why statement review matters so much. A monthly statement is not just a bill, it's an early warning system. If you're the one managing your finances, review every unfamiliar transaction. If a spouse, adult child, or caregiver helps you, it may be wise to build a simple routine around that review. And if you are helping an older parent, don't just ask, "Did you pay the card bill?" Ask, "Did anything unusual show up this month?" There's another part many people overlook. The protection isn't only about reacting after the money is gone. It's also about setting up barriers before a problem happens. Some financial institutions offer alerts. Some consumers benefit from choosing a trusted contact for broader financial protection planning. If that applies to you, it's worth looking into, especially if memory issues, illness, or financial stress are becoming part of the picture. Now, if you're wondering what you should actually do before your next statement arrives, here's the practical answer. First, don't assume a headline applies to your account until you read your own statement and card terms. That includes late fees, interest rates, promotional offers, and any notice of changes. Second, review the statement early, not at the end of the month when everything piles up. If something is wrong, time matters. Third, pay special attention to 4 areas every month: the due date, the late fee section, the APR or change in terms notice, and every transaction you do not immediately recognize. Fourth, if you find an error, move quickly. Call the issuer, then follow the proper written dispute process within the deadline. Fifth, if you are carrying a balance, don't let the minimum payment trick you into thinking the debt is manageable just because the number is small. Look at how long repayment could take and what that interest is doing to your monthly budget. And finally, if you're feeling overwhelmed by all of this, that does not mean you're bad with money. Credit card statements are designed to be dense. The language can be technical. The notices can be easy to miss. The answer is not panic. The answer is a repeatable review habit. So here's the bottom line. The most important new law lesson for seniors is not to trust headlines more than your statement. Some rule changes make news long before they fully affect real accounts. Some protections are already available, but only if you act within the deadline. And some of the biggest costs on a credit card do not come from one major emergency. They come from small details that were easy to ignore until they became expensive. If you're receiving Social Security, living on retirement income, or simply trying to protect your monthly cash flow, your next credit card statement deserves a closer look than ever. Check the due date. Check the interest rate notice. Check the minimum payment warning. Check every unfamiliar charge. And if something seems off, handle it quickly and verify your situation with the card issuer and official consumer guidance. That one habit can help you protect your money, avoid preventable fees, and stay in control. If you found this helpful, make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with a friend or family member who helps manage retirement finances. And if you want, leave a comment about the biggest surprise you've ever found on a credit card statement, because chances are Your experience could help someone else avoid the same mistake.